Hey, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who plays bluegrass. Hello, Bluegrass people. Welcome back to Bluegrass Jam Along. This is your Bluegrass Briefing for Monday, the 10th of April, 2023. Little bits of podcast news. First up, the Tony Rice episode's coming along really well. Got a couple more bits to record for that, but that should be out in a few weeks. Really looking forward to that one. It's going to be great. And this week I will have another two-tempo jam for you because they're really popular. So I'm just going to keep putting those out for a bit, but I will have some new tunes once the Tony Rice thing is out of the way as well. That's it really. Sign up for the mailing list. Link at the bottom of the homepage of the website, bluegrassjamalong.com, or in the show notes, or link in bio at Instagram and places like that. And I can keep you up to date with what's going on. But here comes this week's Church Street news. And on Church Street news this week, a couple of things. First of all, Rob Ike's Rezo Summit Slidefest 2023. That is due in November this year, and it's going to be at the Scarrett Bennett Centre in Nashville. And there'll be Cindy Cashdollar, Billy Cardine, Abby Gardner, Jimmy Hefferman, Bobby Ignano, Jay Starling, and Mike Witcher. I hope I pronounced all of those correctly. And two really special guests this year, Sierra Hull and Justin Moses. Justin's a great slide player. There'll be a great addition to that. And Trey Hensley will be there too. Trey plays a lot with Rob. Plus luthiers Paul Beard and Burl Murdoch. So that's, if you are a slide player of any kind, that's the place to be. Sounds like a really, really interesting event. Rob Ike's Rezo Summit Slidefest 2023. And if you register for your tickets by May the 1st, you get 10% off as well. So I will put a link in the show notes to the website. Go and check that out. That's a really interesting one. And the second bit in Church Street news this week is Delfest, which is returning to its long-standing home in Cumberland, Maryland, over Memorial Day weekend in May this year. And they have added one more special act to the bill, which is Jason Carter and Friends. Jason obviously plays with Del McCoury and the Traveling McCourys, so everybody there will know who he is. He released a great record this year, Low Down, Ho Down. So was it this year? I think it was actually late last year. But he's bringing his tunes with him, so that'd be really interesting. But also Delfest has announced the late night lineup, and that includes on Thursday Keller Williams' Grateful Grass featuring the Hillbenders, Friday Infamous String Dusters with Kitchen Dwellers, Saturday California Honey Drops with Chris Jacobs, and Sunday An Evening with the Traveling McCourys. So that sounds brilliant. A load of good music there, and that is your Church Street news for this week. Which brings me on to The Grass is New, this week's new releases. A couple of bits. There is a new track from Caitlin Canty from the upcoming Quiet Flame album. Everything I've heard from this so far sounds great. The track is called Wild Heart, and it's Caitlin on vocals and guitar, Brittany Haas on fiddle, Sarah Jaros on mandolin and vocals, Paul Coates on bass. It's produced by Chris Eldridge. There's just a bunch of my favourite musicians on that, and it sounds great. So I will stick that on The Grass's new playlist, and I'm really looking forward to hearing that album. That should be great. But also it is Easter weekend here in the UK, and Tim O'Brien has a new track called Little Lamb, which very much sort of, themes of rebirth and renewal and things like that, and that's a great track. It's Tim O'Brien on guitar and lead vocal, with Mike Bubb on bass, Shad Cobb on fiddle, Jan Fabricius on mandolin and vocal, and Corey Walker on banjo. And that's great. So I will stick a link in the playlist to that. I won't stick a link in the playlist because that won't work. I'll stick the actual track in the playlist and stick a link to the playlist in the show notes. You'd have thought I'd be all right this by now, wouldn't you? But yeah, so the Caitlin Canty new single is out, and Tim O'Brien's new single as well. That's it for The Grass is New. And that brings us on to Scroll On Buddy, just a couple of interesting bits and pieces found on social media. First bit is a post from Tristan Scroggins, who I interviewed ages ago on the podcast, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation. I like Tristan a lot. He posted something on Instagram saying that a year ago, and I remember him posting about this at the time, a year ago, he and George Jackson decided to gather some friends together and try and record 100 fiddle tunes in a day. And the post said 13 plus hours later we succeeded, and then went on tour and forgot about it for a while. But you might be hearing more about it soon. I'm really intrigued by that, the idea that they've recorded 100 tunes. I want to know what they are. I want to know why. I want to know what they're going to do with them. So I'll bring you more news on that as I hear any. But yeah, that was just really interesting to see because I'd forgotten about that and I was intrigued by that last year. So we will see. And if I hear any more from Tristan about that, I will see what I can find out and let you know. The second thing is Chris Pandolfi of String Dusters, who has been a guest on the podcast too. He's about to launch season 4 of his podcast Inside the Musician's Brain in April. And that is a fantastic podcast. If you haven't heard that, go back and listen to the first 3 seasons while you wait. But just some great interviews. It's really thoughtful, really digs into some places that other people don't. And yeah, it's a great podcast. I really, really like that. That was the main reason I got Chris on this podcast, was just because I enjoyed his podcast so much. So go check out Inside the Musician's Brain. That's it for Scroll On Buddy. And then just a couple of bits that are in my ears this week. And as I said earlier, Caitlin Canty, I've been listening to What There Is of that out and just really enjoying it. I'm so looking forward to the record. So go and listen to the Grass's new playlist because there's some Caitlin in there. And I've also, just having spent a couple of months now talking to people about Church Street Blues, I've been listening to Church Street Blues a lot again, and such a great record. It's one of those records that I wouldn't change a note on it, even if I could. You think you know it, and then you listen back and realise how much there is in there still. So I've been loving that, and it's still pushed me to go and listen to a couple of the originals again. Things like Ralph McTell's version of Streets of London, and Gordon Lightfoot's version of the tracks he does, and the Bob Dylan version of One More Night. It's just really interesting to see where those songs came from and what Tony did with them. So yeah, just all listening to Church Street Blues and the originals that the Church Street Blues came from, which has been really cool. And that's it for this week. Just the usual bits at the end. Sign up for the mailing list, as I always say. Check out the podcast website, bluegrassjamalong.com, for a list of interviews, for chord sheets, etc., etc. And as always, please do review and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, because that's really, really helpful. That's it. As always, if you're a band, if you're in PR, if you're a festival, if you're a promoter, if you're a manager, whoever you are, if you've got news you want included in these briefings, just shout. It's matt@bluegrassjamalong.com, and I am happy to include as much as I can fit in. I really enjoy putting these together. It gets me aware of what's going on, and it's nice to be able to share that as well. But that is it for this week's Bluegrass Briefing. I'll see you next time. Have a great week. Happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.